Well, this is the SEC game of the week, and it is the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs going to Oxford, Mississippi to play the number 16 Ole Miss Rebels. It is a 3:30 kickoff game, and it should be a really good football game. A lot of unknowns in this game, though. There's a lot of, if you saw the injury report that just came out, it looks like, I don't know, Ole Miss's football team went to war and came back with casualties. I don't know, dude. There was I feel like there was over 10 people that were listed that may not play this week. So we'll have to wait and watch. And it's kind of hard to do a prediction when you have so many key players that you don't know who are going to play or not. But we're going to try to do our best to make a prediction. So anyway, let's talk about these teams. Georgia has played 8 games. Ole Miss has played 9 games. All right. Strength of schedule so far through 8 games for Georgia. They have played the hardest schedule in the country. Ole Miss through 9 games has played the 32nd hardest schedule in the country. So you have to put those things in this when you talk about stats and things. Georgia has played tougher competition. Georgia beat Florida last week 34-20. Did not look that great. Now, Florida is playing better and better, but they looked very sloppy, and I think they're very lucky that DJ Lagway got hurt. For Ole Miss, they probably played their best game of the year, beating Arkansas 63-31. But, you know, Ole Miss has looked really good against bad football teams. I think maybe the best game they played all year outside of this game against Arkansas was the South Carolina game. They limited them to 3 points, but Ole Miss has struggled offensively when they've played really good defenses. So they've racked up a lot of stats against bad football teams, but when they played good defenses, they've struggled. And Georgia has a good defense. Vegas has Georgia as a 2.5-point favorite in this game, and it's basically a pick'em game. It is going to be a great game. So players to watch in this game. Carson Beck for Georgia is the first player I'm going to talk about here. He's got 17 TDs. He's got a little over 2,300 yards passing on the year. He's not having a good year. He was kind of a dark horse candidate for the Heisman Trophy. That's what I had in the preseason. He's definitely not going to New York this year. He's had a pretty rough year. He's got 11 interceptions. He's got 6 interceptions in the past 2 games. Not sure what's going on with him, but he's going to have to play much better this week if they want to win. Jackson Dart for Ole Miss. Now, he's had a much better season. 21 TDs, 3 interceptions, over 3,200 yards passing. The duo of Harris and Watkins has been phenomenal. 1,500 yards between those two. But that's the thing. We don't know if either one of those guys is going to play this week. I don't know if Lane Kiffin is trying to play games with Georgia or what, but Harris didn't play last week. But I'll get more into Watkins here in a minute. For Georgia, Arian Smith. He is Georgia's leading receiver, 503 yards, 3 TDs, 31 receptions. He's coming on, playing better. For Ole Miss, Jordan Watkins, 549 receiving yards, 7 TDs. He is listed as doubtful. I don't know how, because he walked off the field just fine and he played amazing against Arkansas, a game in which he had 5 TDs and had over 200 yards receiving. So I'm a little confused on that. I think even though it had him as doubtful, I'm thinking the dude's going to play. I think it's some gamemanship on Lane Kiffin's part, but we'll see. Trey Harris, he didn't play last week, so does he play? I don't know. C.J. Allen is the next player I'm going to talk about for Georgia. He leads their linebackers and tackles at 41 tackles and 1 interception. You know, surprise, surprise, Georgia has a good defense again this year. And they are going to make Ole Miss really earn the points again this week. And they have been tested. They went into Texas, shut down that potent offense. Great defense for Georgia. Walter Nolan for Ole Miss. He is the leader of that front 7. He is a transfer from Texas A&M. He's got 29 tackles and 3 sacks, and he is very disruptive. He is a very good defensive lineman, and he can really get after you and cause you a lot of issues. He was a huge pickup in the portal for Ole Miss. He has made that defense so much better from where they were last year. Ole Miss had a horrible defense last year. They couldn't stop nobody, and their defense is much better, which I'm going to get into here in just a minute. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now let's talk about the Georgia offense versus the Ole Miss defense. Georgia's total offense is 38th. They are averaging 431 yards a game offensively. Ole Miss, on the other hand, total defense for them, they're 22nd, allowing 316 yards a game. Much better this year defensively. That front seven for Ole Miss is really getting after people. They're averaging over 4 sacks a game, and they have 41 sacks on the season, so they can get after the quarterback. Scoring offense for Georgia is 32nd. They are averaging 33 points a game. Scoring defense for Ole Miss, 6th. They're only allowing 13 points a game. Phenomenal. Rushing offense for Georgia, 97th. They're only averaging 132 yards on the game, on the ground a game. That's way down, and that's way south of what I thought Georgia would do this year. I thought Georgia was going to be much, much better with that offensive line returning that they had. They basically had, I think 85 to 90% of their offensive line returning, and they're just not running the ball very well. I don't know if that's the running backs too. Trevor Etienne, he does have over 400 yards rushing this year, but he's not been that great either. Rushing defense for Ole Miss, 2nd, only allowing 82 yards a game on the ground against that defense. Front seven, like I said, getting after it, and there's just not a lot of holes to run. Passing offense for Georgia, 12th. 299 yards is what they're averaging through the air, and they're doing better. They're getting better as the year goes along as far as their offense is concerned, passing the football. The problem is Carson Beck's interceptions. Like I said earlier in this video just a minute ago, he's got 6 interceptions in the last 2 games. So they cannot do that this week if they're going to win this football game. We won't even be close. They have to be more efficient and do better in their turnover margin, which they're way below what they typically do. Georgia typically takes care of the football, run the ball well. So this is kind of a Georgia team that's kind of not looked like the past 3 or 4 years of what Georgia has, but they still have a good team. Pass defense for Ole Miss is 91st. They're allowing 234 yards a game. So this is something that Georgia can exploit, this passing defense. Now, can Carson Beck have enough time to see his receivers, hit his receivers? Now, Georgia had a huge question mark coming in this year with their receivers. And I really think the receivers are getting better. As Arian Smith, who I talked about earlier, he leads them in yards. He has over 500 yards, and they got 2 receivers that go over 300 yards receiving, which is Lovett and Bell, Dylan Bell. So they've got 3 pretty decent receivers. And they got Oscar Delp, that tight end, who he's a really good target down there on the goal line. So we'll see what happens there. They can exploit that. There's some things there they can really move the ball down the field on that Ole Miss secondary. But they have to have time. Like I just said, Ole Miss is averaging over 4 sacks a game and 41 sacks on the year through 9 games, which leads the country. Now let's talk about the Georgia defense versus the Ole Miss offense. Georgia's total defense is 12th. They're only giving up 295 yards a game. Ole Miss's total offense is 2nd. They are averaging 555 yards offensively a game. Really, really good. Now, I will tell you, the offense has put up really big numbers, kind of like my Tennessee Vols have on inferior competition. Arkansas was really good last week, but a lot of those stats are against bad football teams. They struggled against Kentucky. They struggled against South Carolina, 2 really good defenses there. Georgia's defenses are better than both of those. So, can they keep the momentum from the Arkansas game to this week? Scoring defense for Georgia is 13th. They're allowing 17 points a game. Surprise, surprise. Georgia has another good defense, allowing south of 20 points a game. I know that's a surprise. Scoring offense for Ole Miss is 4th. They're putting up 42 points a game. Lane Kiffin having another good year with his offense. Rushing defense for Georgia is 21st, allowing 108 yards a game. That's respectful. I mean, anytime you're averaging, you're allowing almost south of 100 yards rushing, that's a good rush defense. Rushing offense for Ole Miss is 45th. They're averaging 178 yards a game, which is not bad, but they have took a step back this year. They lost their running back, Judkins, to Ohio State, so they're not as proficient. They were a top 10 rush offense last year, and they've kind of dropped a little bit from there. Pass defense for Georgia is 27th, allowing 187 yards a game. Going to be interesting this game to see if Trey Harris plays Jordan Watkins against that Georgia secondary with Malachi Starks and company. I don't know if they're going to play or they're not going to play. If they do play, are they healthy? Are they going to be effective? Are they going to be a threat to catch balls deep and stretch that Georgia's defense? We'll see. Pass offense for Ole Miss is first. They're averaging 377 yards a game. Jackson Dart, and like I said earlier, Trey Harris has over 900 yards. Jordan Watkins has over 500 yards. They got roughly around 1,500 total yards this season. That is just a phenomenal stats. So this right here, this next stat that I'm going to talk about is turnover margin, and this might tell you who's going to win this game, and it really might. It's a huge stat. Turnover margin for Georgia, they are 82nd right now. They are -1. This is not like Georgia. Georgia usually takes care of the ball. They're the ones who are causing the turnovers. This year, that's not been the case. They're -1 and they're 82nd. Ole Miss, on the other hand, is a completely different story. They're 20th. They're +7. That front seven is disruptive, causing fumbles, causing interceptions, and they're giving their offense a lot of short fields to score the football. Ole Miss defense is completely different from the defense they had last year. So that gets me into my prediction for this game. So it's really hard to do a preview and a prediction for this game when you don't know if players are going to play. So you got to just do with what information you have and try to make the best pick you can. What I do know is Georgia shows up in big games, and I do know Kirby Smart can win the big game. I don't know if Lane Kiffin can win the big game. He's won some decent games, but I've never seen him win a monumental game. And this is a huge game with the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs coming to town. I think that Carson Beck is going to take care of the ball better this game. I think the receivers have their spots where they are able to catch the ball, move the ball effective enough. I think Ole Miss will score some points as well. They have a great quarterback and they can move the ball. But with those 2 receivers being questionable, it's hard for me to pick Ole Miss to win this game, especially against a defense that Georgia has. Did you see what they did against Texas a couple weeks ago? And Georgia has played to the level of their competition. They are going to be up for this game, and you're going to see the same type of Georgia team that you saw in the Texas game. This defense is going to be locked in. I think Carson Beck doesn't make near the mistakes he has the last couple weeks. He takes care of the football. I think you're going to see a more balanced offense. I think they're going to get to probably 100 yards rushing, and that's what they need to do. Now, I will say, if Ole Miss can keep Georgia south of 100 yards rushing and make them one-dimensional, it will be hard for Carson Beck to hit his receivers and not make turnovers because they'll be so one-dimensional. But anyway, I think Georgia is just a little bit better than Ole Miss, especially with these unknowns on the injury report. I got Georgia winning 31-27 over Ole Miss, and a really good football game that I'm not super confident in that pick at all. But with the unknowns in this game, it's hard to pick Ole Miss. And I just think Georgia has played in bigger games than Ole Miss has over the years, and these players just know how to win these games. So anyway, that's my prediction. Georgia 31, Ole Miss 27. I'll talk to you guys later.